race at the planned time, which may mean a bit of a get-out-of-jail-free card potentially for Toprak Razgatlioglu, because the visibility there is not going to be good enough to go racing, surely.
Yeah, that's biblical rain at this stage, and certainly you're going to expect to see the start delayed for these riders. You can see out of our box again, Michael van der Mark's running off the grid. Quite a few people making their exits from the grid now as well, and you can see as Toprak makes his way to the grid, just these conditions aren't going to be possible to start the race on time.
Yes, I think that was almost foretold, wasn't it? That was an inevitability, because once we saw the rain coming down, the spray in these kind of conditions would be impossible to ride unless you hit the front. So Razgatlioglu with a little bit of pre-race acrobatics to scale the pit wall, and can now make his way back into the garage, which means we can continue to build up what is going to be a fascinating World Championship encounter. This man, Jonathan Rea, the reigning world champion, that's the visibility that we're talking about there.
Yeah, absolutely nothing out there right now for these riders, and certainly a bit too dangerous to be going out on this track, especially considering that they haven't been out in wet conditions at any stage here in Mandalika. So a real challenge for everyone, and the right decision being made there by the organisers.
Everyone making their way back to the pit boxes. We saw this for the support class, the Asia Talent Cup races earlier on today as well, although it wasn't raining anything quite like this, I can tell you.
Yeah, and you can see there everyone making their way back into the pits, and they do look like they've been drowned out there, really, and certainly for everyone it's going to be a little bit of a delay now. We'll wait and see what update we get on a start time. Tom Sykes still making his way around, and you can see just how difficult it is out there. Even at the slow speed Sykes is riding around at far too dangerous conditions. Very easy to aquaplane in conditions like this. A lot of standing water is going to be out there.
I'd like to see where Jules Cluzel is at the moment, after we saw him in his undergarments a few minutes ago waiting to get into a pool. He didn't need to get into a pool, he only needed to stand in pit lane.
Yeah, and it is still warm out there. It's 26 degrees, 27 degrees, so it is very tropical, typical of what we get here in Southeast Asia. And it is actually this kind of downpour that we were waiting for over the last few days. It's threatened to come, but we haven't had anything like it up until now.
Classic kind of weather conditions that we're used to seeing, for example, in Malaysia, as the seat is dried off and the bike dried off as best as possible for Toprak Razgatlioglu.
Yeah, you can see Bono there just using the air guns to clear off as much of that as possible, and that's what you have to do at this stage. Toprak doesn't want to be too cross-eyed when he's out on the bike, but he's still pretty relaxed at this stage as we wait to find out when we'll get a new schedule here, but you can see just how quickly the conditions have changed.
I did say that Toprak has not been known for his wet weather prowess in the past through his career, and to an extent I've probably done him a disservice, because this season he has made a step forward, even if he's clearly not as strong in the wet as he is in the dry.
Yeah, in the dry conditions Toprak's as good as anyone, in the wet conditions he showed, especially in Catalonia, he's made a big step forward. He was able to lead that race, open up a pretty commanding lead at one stage as well before he had a technical problem, and even though he had that problem, that would have been one of the races that would have given him a big boost in terms of his ability to perform well in those conditions.
I think the race that I call to mind to the greater extent is the Super Pole race in Portimao, where Toprak just dropped backwards through the field once it started raining, ended up finishing in 6th position. Michael van der Mark on that occasion was the race winner. Unexpected rare race victory for BMW. If we end up in a heavy wet weather situation, not only will it be more difficult for Toprak, he'll also have to be more cautious, knowing that he's got a championship points he needs to score.
Well, the other side of that coin as well is in Portimao it was quite changeable. It was drying out. In these conditions, if it was to start anytime soon, that's where it would be a very stable weather conditions in terms of the conditions out on track, so you would be able to get faster and faster as the race progressed. You'd be able to understand where the grip is. That makes it very different, but you can see there for the GRT Yamaha squad just how much rain did come down. Everyone absolutely soaked in their pit box.
Nobody ever likes a delayed start, but I tell you what, we've wished for this, haven't we, Steve? So we can't complain about it now, and let's hope we do get a wet race. It adds an extra little bit of spice.
Well, we've had spice all the way through the season, and you can see there for Garrett Gerloff relaxed in his pit box, and the number 31 Yamaha getting ready for a second row of the grid start. His best qualifying effort since Estoril earlier in the season, so certainly for Gerloff, good to see him able to have that turn of speed all the way through this weekend, and hopefully we're able to see him sign off his season with a few good the results, but these conditions, total lottery at this stage, so we'll just have to wait and see when the new race start will be announced. But you can see the rain still really hammering down at this point.
Kind of weather we're used to seeing in places like Malaysia and so on. It's this part of the world, isn't it? When it comes down heavily. Speaking to our colleagues who came to the circuit much in advance of the round to prepare everything behind the scenes in order for this race to take place. Of course, it's only the second weekend since this circuit was inaugurated, let alone raced on. This is the first race weekend here, and they were all saying, I tell you what, when it rained for 24 hours and you were practically getting Noah's Ark out.
Yeah, and certainly they'll go 2 by 2 on the way back into the pit boxes, but for all the riders and the teams, this is where it becomes a real challenge, because you do need to keep calm, you do need to keep cool, you do need to make sure that you're ready to go at a moment's notice. But as it is right now, it's certainly going to be quite a while. Looking out of our commentary box onto the starting grid, there's a huge amount of standing water down there now.
When we see the pictures away from the circuit and we see the palm trees and so on, it looks like one of those classic images that you're used to seeing on the 1 o'clock news, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think Michael Fish might have been around as well just to give the weather forecast.
He's swimming out there.
It's definitely going to be a case for all of these teams and riders trying to see what's going to happen, because obviously enough here at this part of the world, around about 6 o'clock you do tend to get very dark, so you'll run out of light very quickly on a day like this as well. It's only 3 o'clock local time, so you do need the rain to stop, you do need to be able to have safe conditions out there. You do also need there to be light as well, so that's going to be an added challenge now to try and come up with a schedule when the conditions stay like this.
I'll be jumping the gun a little bit here, but if we do end up in a situation where the track conditions don't improve sufficiently to go racing this afternoon, the precedent has been set. When race 1 is cancelled, the 2 previous occasions that's happened, it's then been restaged in lieu of the Superpole race in the morning, and we would stand to lose one of 3 scoring opportunities for Jonathan Ray. It could be Ray who comes off the worst of all for this situation.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see what will happen from the conditions. Obviously, organisers are going to want to make sure that we're able to have the 3 Superbike races to the World Championship to be decided. It's been a thrilling campaign all the way through. You can see the safety car out on track now. They're trying to assess just how much standing water there is. Just look at the pictures, they speak for themselves.
Yes, it's more of an unsafety car at the moment, isn't it, as it makes its way around the circuit. 4.3 kilometres of Olympic-sized swimming pool.
Yeah, a huge amount of standing water out there, and that just goes to show just how difficult it's going to be, because the rain hasn't stopped. It's still coming down hard. You can hear it over the microphones out on the ambient cameras and the mics out there, so huge amount of rain still falling down at this stage.
Well, you can see it from these super slow motion images when you look at the tyres. That's how far up the water is coming. But more importantly, the spray. And when we're talking about bikes, you're going to have a trail of spray coming up from the riders in front of you. But also, you're going to have the rain lashing down on your visor. It's not like when you're driving out on a motorway and you've got the windscreen wipers on. These riders are going to be receiving it full in the face while it's still coming down.
Yeah, that was one of the issues we had at Imola a few years ago. It wasn't so much the actual conditions of the track, it was the spray that would kick off. Obviously enough, in Imola, that's where the spray gets held up in a lot of trees and wooded areas, whereas here it's just because of that sheer standing water. But that's another challenge for everyone to deal with. You can see here, just looking down towards turn 10, that there's absolutely no chance of making anything out in that camera.
Well, it reminds me almost of the sandstorm in Argentina at the last round, because our visibility from the camera, from our commentary position, and normally you'd be able to see great distances from up here. We're just at the top level of the tower, so this directly above the garages there, that's the 2nd floor. We're on the 3rd floor above in one of the commentary booths, and normally we can see right out, we can see the grandstands almost on the other side of the circuit. I can barely see the grandstand on the other side of the track, let alone the other side of the circuit.
Yeah, that's only about 75 metres away from us, so the visibility really has come down at this stage. But as you can see, for Michael Ruben Rinaldi on the 5th row of the grid, he'd struggle to see the starting lights if we were to go now at this stage. But that you can see as that rain comes down, just heavier and heavier, and the challenge for everyone now is going to just be able to make sure that they're able to get themselves dried off as much as anything else, because there is going to be a pretty sizable delay, you'd imagine.
Yes, Rinaldi well out of position in terms of his qualifying performance, all the way down in 14th place. So he might be one of the riders more grateful for this at the moment. Although we do anticipate that any rider who's behind, when the poor weather continues is going to be the rider who receives the least benefit, as it were. The rider with clear visibility in front of them will be the most grateful, although they will also be the first rider to encounter the puddles. Penny for your thoughts, Mr. Chaz Davies, his final race weekend in World SBK. He's one of the top 10 riders with most starts and certainly most podiums in the Superbike World Championship. He's seen everything down his Superbike World Championship career, but I don't think he would have asked for this when he was surfing in anticipation of this round.
Yeah, we have seen rain like this at different times in the Superbike paddock, but like you said earlier on, Alex, you're looking back to Sepang. It is only in this region that you see downpours all of a sudden like this. It has been threatening all the way through today. The dark clouds have rolled in over the course of the last few hours, and obviously we saw a few spits of rain during the Super Sport class, but nothing quite like this.
Yes, it doesn't look good at the moment, does it, to go racing this afternoon, as Tom Sykes pretends to be squeezing the moisture out of his gloves. So that's because he was the last rider still making his way round on the track.
Well, at least for Tom, he doesn't have to dry his hair off, but he's obviously looking forward to his potentially last race of his World SBK career. But what's interesting is there's been a fair bit of chatter now over the course of this weekend that maybe for Sykes, the talk of moving to BSB might be a little bit quick on the draw, and he has been seen chatting away to the Auralac Kawasaki team and a few other teams as well. So maybe the former world champion is going to live to fight another season in World SBK.
Yes, he's certainly keen to remain in the Superbike World Championship. He was frustrated to have been rather brushed aside by BMW after what's been his third but also his best campaign with that BMW Motorrad outfit, where he's had podium finishes, where he's looked on the pace, where he was riding well in the World Championship standings ahead of teammate Michael van der Mark before injury to Sykes, before a couple of unfortunate weekends for the number 66. But he was moved on to make way for Scott Redding at BMW for next season. It didn't appear that Sykes was interested in riding for the Bonovo outfit, and those rides between rounds have gone the way of Eugene Laverty and Loris Baz. It's going to be 4 riders, all given equal status theoretically from the BMW factory in 2022.
Yeah, BMW making a big effort for next year, and obviously enough, they've had some reasons to smile through the course this year, none more so than when this man Michael van der Mark was able to pick up a wet weather victory in Portimao, and certainly for van der Mark, that was the highlight of this season. It has been a big challenge for him after switching from the Yamaha squad last year.
Certainly secondary to the Riders World Championship fight, the manufacturers' standings. Yamaha 574 points, Ducati 558 points, Kawasaki 520 points. It does go to show what a brilliant and close-fought championship we've had this season.
Yeah, the manufacturers' championship goes all the way down to the last race of the season, although in all likelihood it is just down to Yamaha versus Ducati, but we've seen all 3 manufacturers very closely matched through the course of this season. Bit of misfortune for all of the different riders and those manufacturers through the course this year, but on the balance of things, the way the championships have played out with Toprak, Jonathan Ray and Scott Redding as the top 3 riders, and the manufacturers' championship as well, it has been about right for what we've seen through the course of this season.
Yes, Kawasaki lost ground mainly as a result, to be honest, of Alex Lowe's being injured, and then when Jonathan had incidents, there was no one there to sort of pick up the pieces, and Kawasaki's run of consecutive scoring that dated back years went out the window. And once you lose major points, they're difficult to make up in the Manufacturers' Championship, because it's only the best scoring rider from each team that counts towards that Manufacturers' title, unlike the Teams Award, where it is the top 2 performing riders from each team that score in that contest. But the World Championships, the Riders' World Championship and the Manufacturers' World Championship, are coming down to this final round, and at the moment the water is coming up to your ankles.
Yeah, and that gives you the perfect illustration of just how much standing water there is. That's probably on the outside of maybe the last corner, because there is a few marshals out there just wandering around, but as it is right now, it's definitely a little bit of time to get yourself cooled off at this stage for some of the super sport riders.
Well, every reason to enjoy himself, Mr. Dominic Egerton, the 2021 world champion, and why bother going back to the hotel? You're probably not going to be able to get back there anyway in these conditions when you can just stand stand in the middle of the pit lane and have a wash there.
Yeah, and Domi's been in good form all the way through this season, and nice and relaxed this weekend. He's just after finishing on the podium in the Supersport race. There were spots of rain for that, but nothing like what we have now. You can see for Toprak, when he made his way to the grid, he was already making his way off of it pretty quick.
Yes, Emperor Penguin style almost, rushing away. And as I said previously, a little bit of acrobatics to scale the pit wall as well. But this looks to me like a mere formality. I cannot see how the track will be in conditions to be able to race this afternoon at all. These, of course, are replay images. We've long since vacated the grid. Umbrellas wouldn't